a few more people joining us. Looks like we have 62 already, and we did have 100 registered, so we should have a good group today. Hey everyone, and welcome to the OpenSSF Town Hall meeting. Our agenda for today, we'll spend some time early on just talking about, since this is our first town hall, we'll talk some about the OpenSSF and give you an overview, some of how it came about and some progress we've been making. Then we'll get into what's happening across the governing board and technical advisory council, and also a number of working groups. And then we will have Q&A throughout our session. So at the end of each section, we'll try to allow around 3 minutes for Q&A. And then at the end, we're also allowing up to 30 minutes for discussion and Q&A. Before we get started, I need to share with you a couple of housekeeping items. The first is about antitrust policy. So we do have people in this meeting who work for a variety of different companies and industry competitors. And to ensure that we are complying with antitrust and competition law, we need everyone to be aware of some of the requirements. And those you can find in the link here, which is to the Linux Foundation and antitrust policy. Another item has to deal with code of conduct. So our intent for this meeting is to provide a harassment-free experience for all of the participants. And to do that, we have set aside some code of conduct policies, and the details of those can be found at the link below. And then our last housekeeping item, this has to do with how we're handling Q&A for this event. So again, for an improved audio and visual experience for all, we ask that you remain muted or with video off unless you're asking a question. And the way that we'll be handling questions is through the Slido application. So type sli.do into your browser, and you'll come up to that app and use the event code OpenSSF. You can go ahead and ask questions there, or you can like an existing question to upvote it. And we do have some folks who will be monitoring the questions. Sharif is leading that for us. And so he'll bring those up as we get to the points in our presentation where we're ready for questions. So thank you. Let's talk about the OpenSSF and some background for why we're here. We have a shared belief that OSS is a common good, and like the air that we breathe and the water that we drink, any developer can create open source, and others can contribute, and we can all use. Open source is the basis for all modern software, including the world's most critical infrastructure. And the software that we create and consume, whether what we're providing is open source or proprietary software, it can have dozens and hundreds or more dependencies on open source. And it's a challenge, a great challenge, to ensure the security of open source across all of the developers, development environments, and security practices that are used for individual components. And no one individual or organization can do it alone. So we founded the OpenSSF, the Open Source Security Foundation. We started in August. It was announced on August 3rd of this year. The purpose for the foundation is to inspire and enable the community to help secure the software we all depend on. The OpenSSF began as a consolidation of existing efforts. So there have been over quite a few years and a number of entities that have gotten together with the focus on securing open source. And our goal was to consolidate them and get more of us working together. The three that we consolidated were the Open Source Security Coalition, which was founded by GitHub, a group called JOSI, the Joint Open Source Security Initiative, the Core Infrastructure Initiative, which was founded by the Linux Foundation several years ago in response to the Heartbleed incident. And these all came together under OpenSSF. So we're collaborating to secure the open source ecosystem. We launched 3 months ago. In those 3 months, we've grown from 19 member organizations to 35, and we've grown from about 50 individual participants to over 133. And we're adding, one or two. The trend has been we're adding 1 or 2 additional participants every day. We have a number of ways for individuals and organizations to get involved. So we communicate over mailing lists. We have a group meeting calendar. We've got Slack set up. We have a GitHub and also a Twitter account. And these slides have links to those, so you can see those. You can also go to the OpenSSF Get Involved page, and there's more information and links for all of these. For individuals, we have opportunities to participate in technical working groups. So these are our 6 technical working groups, and you'll hear from all of those working groups later in our presentation. And then we also have a couple of governing-oriented groups. So there's the Technical Advisory Council that helps with communication and coordination across the individual working groups, and then also a governing board planning committee. And we'll talk about those later as well. Then we have opportunities for organizations to join as corporate members for the OpenSSF, and by doing so, they can showcase support and support and eventually contribute some funding toward OpenSSF initiatives. In our first 3 months, we've been making great progress, and we reported some accomplishments in our press release. One of those is we established an edX course on secure software development fundamentals. We'll talk more about that. We consolidated the Core Infrastructure Initiative projects into OpenSSF. We added 16 new member organizations and 5 new governing board members. We've now done our second press release. This is our first town hall meeting, and no foundation or initiative is complete without a store where you can obtain logo swag. So let's talk about the Secure Software Development Fundamentals course. This is an edX course. edX is I think I should call it a MOOC, so massive online, and I'm forgetting exactly what that stands for. Anyway, the key point is that this is a place that's free for anyone to go to register for a course, go and take it for free. edX, I believe, was founded by Harvard and MIT, and there are a bunch of great technical content that's available there. Again, the courses are free. There is a fee to take a test to obtain a formal certificate, and that's an optional thing for people. You can sign up on the edX site, and there's a link to that site here. And please feel free to share the blog post that provides more information with your network. It's open to everyone, not just OpenSSF participants. Let's take a minute, and we have a great, the Linux Foundation put together a video as an overview for that course. So let's take a minute and review that.
Almost all software is under attack, and many organizations are unprepared. That's why the Open Source Security Foundation, a project of the Linux Foundation, has developed the Secure Software Development Fundamentals Professional Certificate. This program is geared towards software developers interested in learning how to develop secure software, focusing on practical steps that can be taken even with limited resources. The program teaches software developers to create and maintain systems that are much harder to successfully attack, reduce the damage when attacks are successful, and speed the response so that any latent vulnerabilities can be rapidly repaired. The best practices covered in the program apply to all software developers, and it additionally includes information especially useful to those who use or develop open source software. The program consists of 3 training courses covering all aspects of the software development lifecycle and the best practices for secure development during each of them. Topics include security basics, secure design principles, supply chain evaluation, implementation, security verification, fielding, and more. Upon completion of the program, you will receive a professional certificate from the Linux Foundation and edX, the nonprofit platform for education and learning founded by Harvard and MIT. Enroll today and begin improving your secure development practices.
Okay, yeah, so that's, let me just make sure sorry about that. All right. So I can mention that we're having great response for that course already. I was looking at this on Friday with our LF staff, and we have already about 600 people signed up across all 3 courses. And especially for the first course, we have about 220, again, as of Friday, who are signed up already. So we're really excited about this. David Wheeler put this course together, and it's a great first introduction, a great accomplishment for LFF, for the Open Source Security Foundation, and a great introduction to security fundamentals. Another accomplishment in these first 3 months is the consolidation with core infrastructure initiatives. So in particular, there are 3 things that the CII project was working on that we have now brought into OpenSSF. The first is a survey of developers. This was completed by a group at Harvard. And in this survey, we're asking developers for some of the top OpenSSF projects about some of their practices. And this has been transitioned to the Securing Critical Projects Working Group. And you might hear a bit more of that in that work when that group reports out. The second item is a census project. And so this was a census of critical projects completed by Harvard. And this helps us understand how many people are using which open source projects. This particular one contains a number of developer libraries. And so we're looking at continuing to expand that project and capture a census of even more types of open source projects. There was a report completed last February, and we're intending to do follow-on work. The last item is the CII Best Practices Badge project. And what this does is allow free and open source software developers or maintainers to show that they are following best practices. So they can they can describe what they're doing. Are they requiring 2-factor authentication? Are they using a CI/CD process, and more? And so we have, and then as they complete that information, they can receive badges anywhere from passing to silver and gold, and higher levels based on the level of security that they provide. We have over 3,400 projects participating, and just over 480 of those have actually earned a badge. And here's a link where you can find out more information about that. We've increased our member organizations. We now have 35 member organizations, and they cover a number of large organizations from large to small, and we have also a number of security-oriented organizations. a couple of, well, three of the big Linux distro providers. And these are in our general members, and then we also have associate members, and that includes a number of nonprofit organizations and also universities. Membership is open to any organization, and there's more information about that at the members link from the website. And I mentioned that we do now have a store, and from the store, we have logoed t-shirts. We have decals with OpenSSF, the OpenSSF logo, and we also have an adorable plushie. And you can see him there. And I also have got a plushie now. So here's the plushie live. For the OpenSSF, one of the things that we wanted to do as we got started was to lay out our values for the organization. So I'll run through these briefly. We have a total of 8 values. One is that we believe the security of open source is a public good, and we have an obligation to address it for the community as a whole. We encourage all interested stakeholders to participate in the foundation, and we make that work publicly available. So we believe in openness and transparency. We have a maintainers first approach to what we do. So what we want to do is make maintainers successful. And so we show respect for them and work towards creating resources and tooling that scale to the ecosystem as a whole. We value diversity, and we work to actively include people from a range of backgrounds and promote a culture of mutual respect. We agility, so we follow an approach where we try to work fast, learn, create projects, work fast, learn from our mistakes, and move forward. And then the last 3, we give credit where credit is due. We don't bias toward any ecosystem, vendor, or platform. And we treat each other with empathy. So we're committed to creating a culture of listening and caring for multiple opinions. All right, so that completes the overview section. Let's take a minute to stop now and see if we have any questions on that. Sharif, do you want to jump in?
Hey, Kay. There was a question on, can we make the store available for non-US countries? And is there a discount code for swag for participants of the town hall?
So I'm sure there's not a discount code. And I don't know, David Wheeler, or I don't know if Todd is still with us. I don't know the answer for international.
I don't have an answer for international, but I just saw the message. So I've asked some other folks to look into what it'll take for shipping to various countries. We don't control some of that stuff, but we'll at least see what we can do. Okay.
And the last one is, for now at least, is there a outreach committee or equivalent?
We don't currently have an outreach committee, but that is something that's a good segue to the governing board, which is where committees such as these can, where we'll create such committees. So, and that's a great idea for a committee. All right, Sharif, should I go on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's talk now about the governing board. So the OpenSSF has 2 major governing bodies. There's the governing board, which deals with business and finance, issues of business and finance, and then the technical advisory council manages the work of our technical community. So the governing board specifically is responsible for things like membership and dues, business and community outreach, which someone just asked about, policies and procedures, committees to support the mission of OpenSSF, budget and fundraising, and then also creating use cases, user stories, keeping the website up to date to help inform the ecosystem and technical community. Governing board members. So here's a list of our governing board members. We initially had 8 governing board members, and we've added 5 recently. Our 5 new members are Jeff Altman from Aristor, and let me get Anand Pashupathy from Intel, and Lek Sendeki from Canonical. We also added a representative from the Technical Advisory Council, that's Dan Lawrence, to our group. I think we missed him in this slide, sorry, Dan. And then I'm very excited to announce our latest representative, who was just elected on last Friday, and this is Ian Coldwater. And Ian will serve as our security community individual representative. So we were looking for someone who has experience maintaining projects to come in and make sure that that point of view is represented on our governing board. So again, congratulations, Ian, and welcome to the governing board. So activities of the governing board, we have monthly meetings, and the governing board has monthly meetings. We meet for 1 hour the first week of the month. In addition to those monthly meetings, we have one committee created currently, which is our planning committee, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then we do anticipate future committees. We haven't created those yet, but we're at a point where if we have people who are interested in helping to lead those and organize them, we can get more started. Some that we've discussed are a committee for identifying conferences that we should participate in, and either helping to create full-day work streams or just giving overviews of OpenSSF. We are anticipating a communications and marketing committee, and then another one that will be looking at finances, budgeting, and dues. So our committees are open to public participation. People can join the planning committee currently, and as we create these additional committees, we'll be inviting members to join. So that's the governing board. And then let me touch on what's happening in the governing board planning committee. So the planning committee coordinates planning and communication across the organization. We are on a we've established a quarterly planning cadence, and the end dates for those quarters are October, January, April, and July. On that cadence, we'll have a press release quarterly and a town hall meeting quarterly. And we also will identify governing board objectives that are things that we'll highlight for the upcoming quarter, and technical objectives. So the planning committee doesn't designate those items, the governing board and the TAC do, but the planning committee helps to just work with the governing board and the TAC to make sure things are moving along so that we can get them into press releases. The other thing that we're doing in the planning committee currently, later this could move to a separate committee, but we're looking at website updates. So we updated the Get Involved experience on the website. We're also coordinating community-wide blog posts, Twitter posts, and organization announcements. So you can contact the planning committee if you have something that you would like to make sure we communicate or celebrate on any of our communication channels. So if you want to get something into the press release or make sure it's highlighted in an upcoming town hall meeting, if you want to create a blog post for something that's going on in a working group or otherwise, have that posted to Twitter through our account, or have an announcement made to the OpenSSF community, or if you have changes that you'd like to see to the website. And another thing that you can communicate to us is if there's something you'd like to see the community accomplish in an upcoming planning milestone. So if you've got ideas for any of those, feel free to send email to the planning committee. And I've got a link to the planning committee alias there. You can also get involved in the planning committee. So if you're someone who enjoys planning or product or project management, everyone's welcome. We meet weekly on Mondays at 10 a.m. And I've got some links here to the meeting agenda and notes and the email list and also the GitHub page that has information about the planning committee. All right, so one last thing I want to mention, and this is an overview of several. So the Linux Foundation provides support for us a couple of really amazing people. And one of those is David Wheeler. David is the director of open source supply chain at the LF. And he has a strong background in security. And he works with us as a subject matter expert on security. And he's been helping us in a bunch of ways. One, as I mentioned earlier, he led the process to consolidate the CII initiatives into OpenSSF. And he also led the creation of the edX training program. And he's been involved in all the working groups. He's just a wonderful resource. The other resource that I'd like to call out is Lindsay Mays Gendro, and she provides project management support for the OpenSSF. So she helps us, schedule a bunch of our meetings, keeps us on track for the governing board, and she does a lot of the work on the website for us, and helps with sending out Twitter announcements and those kinds of things. So a couple of great resources, and we thank them very much. Okay, let's take a break again and see, Sharif, do we have any more questions we can answer before we move on to the TAC?
Yes, there was one question, which is, don't you agree that active contributors to OpenSSF working groups should receive a complimentary copy of Goose Game, the Untitled Goose Game?
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, so I guess we'll have to capture that and take it offline to discuss with the Linux Foundation staff. We're a little tight on funding, so I'm not exactly sure how we'd make that happen, but
maybe they give out bug bounties and they can sell copies of their game for bug bounties.
Okay, great.
There's one more question, but we can leave that on after the working groups because it's more of a technical question.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, so that covers the introduction and the governing board. So I'll turn it now over to Ryan Haining, and he'll walk through the Technical Advisory Council.
Thank you, Kay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Haining, and I'm part of the Technical Advisory Council. Kay, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So currently, the members of the council, we have 7 of us. So you can see a number of these faces kind of showed up on the governing board as well. And so this is the current members, and in the future, these will change a little bit because we are considered bootstrapped right now. And so these are the guys we're helping to figure out sort of the next steps to get more permanent members. And I'll talk about that in a second. So next slide. So the mission of the TAC is we're responsible for the oversight of the various technical initiatives of the OpenSSF. So that includes the working groups, the various projects, sort of all the technical side. So we're going to approve and facilitate collaboration of those working groups. So right now we have 6 different working groups. Those can change as time comes and goes. We'll get new strategies and new groups to focus on those things, and some will eventually sunset as in future. And so we kind of ensure that all those things are coordinated and making sure that they're collaborating efficiently and that work is happening in an optimal way. And in addition, we assist with identifying funding requirements. So if a working group has a need for funding, say for infrastructure, or perhaps they need to hire developer resources or an outside vendor or something like that, we can help them identify those needs and then coordinate with the governing board to ensure that those resourcing needs get met. Next slide. So far what we've done, we've developed a list of potential future actions that we're not currently working on. So like I mentioned, we have 6 existing working groups, but we have a massive laundry list of potential things we could work on. You know, as everybody knows, you know, the world is wide open as far as security and particularly open source. So there's a lot of areas to go tackle. So we're sort of building up a backlog of that. And then what we're gonna do with that is leverage sort of what we've been doing now and the future work that we could do to develop the vision for the TAC and sort of what our technical strategy will be for the upcoming year. And using that, we're going to formalize the life cycle of technical initiatives. What does it mean to be an official, working group, and what are the different stages once they get sunset, and that sort of thing. And then how can you get involved? So we're kind of a small group right now as far as the official TAC members, but we actually have quite a few people that participate in these groups. So we meet bi-weekly, so every other Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So our next meeting coming up is going to be on the 17th. The calendar invite is listed here. We have our meeting minutes listed, so you can go back and see some of the things that we've discussed in the past and where we're headed in the future. And like I said, even though there's a group of 7 people that are official TAC members, we have much larger involvement even now. So we're definitely open and welcome to have more people come and join us there and talk about where you want to see things go. And if you have ideas for working groups that can help contribute, the TAC is the right place to bring that up. And additionally, for communications, we have the official TAC mailing list, we have the Slack channels, and then also we're active on GitHub. So if you have ideas for something you want to talk about in a future TAC meeting, you can open up a GitHub issue, or you can even add it directly into the meeting notes. We have a section right at the top for future agenda items. Next slide, I think that's it for the TAC. So any questions on that before we jump into the next one?
No questions that are TAC related.
Excellent.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Scavetta. I lead the Identifying Security Threats Working Group. And I'm here just to give you a quick update on what we've been up to. So next slide. Okay, so our mission is to enable stakeholders to have informed confidence in the security of open source projects. That took a while to come up with such a short mission. Basically, we want to ensure that the people that use open source, that create open source, that base their businesses off of open source, understand what the risk is, and that they're assuming based off of lots of different things. And part of that involves understanding what the both general ecosystem threats are, but also specific to individual projects. So next slide. So we have we have one kind of accomplishment, and the other one is kind of the work in progress. So the top one is the accomplishment. We wrote a paper. The paper describes ecosystem level threats. So it was intended to be everything that, thanks, John. It's intended to be, everything that could go wrong with the open source ecosystem from the perspective of the kind of development lifecycle. So developer comes up with an idea. Maybe the idea was like just a really insecure idea, like the design is bad, or they're coding it and they're making mistakes, or they upload it to a website and the website gets popped and the code is tampered with. or someone consumes the code, and when they're consuming it, it gets modified in transit or something. So we tried to look at this broadly and say, here's everything that can possibly go wrong. Where do we really think the risk is? So at the end of the paper, there's kind of a consolidated list of kind of more or less recommendations or things that we believe the community should pay attention to or pay more attention to. Some of these are short-term things, some of these are long-term things, some are tractable, some are not. But one of the intents of writing the paper was to help guide the OpenSSF or the community writ large in terms of what to focus on. So it would be a little bit less, it would be a little bit more formal than picking ideas that everybody has at the top of their head and putting a little bit of little bit of science behind it. That paper is available through that download link. Luigi Gabello also converted it to Markdown, which is awesome. So if you have updates, if you disagree strongly, open up an issue, send a pull request. This is not intended to be a document that is written in stone. We also could have been wrong in certain things. So we are interested in moving that to kind of a next release at some point pretty soon. So if you have things that you'd like to contribute, please do so. So that's the ecosystem level part, and then down to the individual projects. What we really want to do is collect, curate, communicate, aggregate, all the security metrics for open source projects. So this means zlib has these attributes, things like project health and the results of static analysis, and whether or not a security team or security expert or researcher or whoever has really looked at it. And we think that a lot of these metrics and data and information can be pulled together to give the stakeholder, either someone that wants to use an individual open source component, or a compliance team that uses, whose organization that they represent uses tens of thousands of, or hundreds of thousands of components, and understand where the risk really lives. So we've been working at this for a while. We have a proof of concept kind of UI. We've put a lot of thought into metrics definitions and formal requirements. That said, there are other things that are going on. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, gee, that kind of sounds a lot like what the badge program does. Well, there is an overlap there. There's a natural overlap. As you'll hear later, there's another project that there's definitely overlap. And my personal belief is that all of these should rationalize where they fit and where they feed, and working groups themselves are fluid. So we will do the right thing. So yeah, there's a source repository. If you'd like to play with this, you can get it up and running pretty quick. But we are really looking for more help here. This is a really hard problem. And it's important that we make progress. So if you want to contribute, please reach out. We will, get you invited and all that stuff. So yeah, this is just a mock UI of what this could look like. But really what this is showing is, the individual projects and what their kind of quote score is. And, score can be a objective thing. It can be a subjective thing, like an SSL Labs score. I think as long as we're clear and transparent in how we calculate things, we can provide something that people can trust. And next slide, I think that was it. Oh yeah, if you want to get involved more, we have meeting minutes there, so you can kind of see what we've been up to. Shoot me an email and I'll send you the invite. I need to get the invite to be kind of public, where I can just post it in the calendar. I think I can now, but regardless, right now, just email me. You'll get the invite. We're meeting this Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So if you're up that early or not live on the West Coast, that would be awesome. Thank you. Any questions?
I have no questions, at least on the slide I'll do.
Okay. Cool. Well, yep. If you have any, please post them. Thanks.
Okay, hi folks. Right, so my name is Simon Bennett and I'm leading the Security Tooling Working Group. Our mission is to provide universally accessible tooling to help the open source community secure their code. And what we want to do is make sure that the tools we provide and champion are really useful and effective for everyone. And one thing on a kind of personal note for me, I think one of the best things for this working group is that it's brought together specialists in a wide range of areas. So we've got people who know about dynamic testing, static testing, software composition analysis, fuzzing, deliberately vulnerable applications. And it's a chance to learn about the challenges we'll face, how we're addressing them, and where the overlaps are, and basically learn from each other. Next slide, please. So there's more work going on this. There's work going on fuzzing, try to identify the most critical open source projects to fuzz. There are code QL rules being written. We're working on a web application definition for dynamic testing. And we've looked at combining vulnerability definitions for active and static vulnerabilities. We want to just focus on a couple of accomplishments this time. The first of those is the publishing of the GitHub Actions for OWASP ZAP. For those of you who don't know, we believe ZAP is the world's most frequently used web application scanner. It is, of course, completely free. So the baseline scan is just by default is a 1-minute spider and then passive detection. So it's quite quick and therefore quite good to run in CI/CD, but can still find a whole load of potential vulnerabilities, particularly missing security controls. And then there's a ZAP full scan, which is an active scan. So it's really attacking your application, and that can take some time. If you want to know any more about that, then please talk to me about it. The second one I want to highlight is the CV benchmarking. And this is a project that is making available data sets of historical JavaScript and TypeScript CVEs. So that's the metadata and branches with both all the code before when the vulnerability was present and immediately after it's been fixed. And the idea with this is it allows anyone to benchmark their static analysis tools against real vulnerabilities. So can your tool find the original vulnerability, and then can it detect that it's actually been fixed? So go on to the next slide. As you can see, there's details for getting involved. That's going to be the CV benchmark is going to be presented at Black Hat in London this year. And then it'll be open sourced, and so there's more details we're getting involved in there. And if you want to get involved in the working group, then the details are on the repo, and the link to join is on the OpenSSF calendar as well. And if you want to get involved with ZAP, then get in touch with me. And that's it. I thought keep it short and sweet. Any questions?
Hey, Simon, there was one question on how frequently the ZapScan database library is updated with vulnerabilities, and any defined frequency for such library updates.
So we don't have a library as such, we have code. So we have a set of scan rules, and we have passive scan rules, active scan rules, WebSocket scan rules, and we have different levels of, so we have release quality, beta quality, and alpha quality, and these are all defined in packages, add-ons, which are on the ZAP marketplace. So we will change these as frequently as necessary. And the one thing I think is worth remembering is that ZAP is a tool for finding vulnerabilities in custom applications. So it's not like we're looking for known vulnerabilities. We go, okay, there's one particular, we know that you're running WordPress, this particular version, therefore we can tell it's that, and therefore we found this vulnerability, or like to. ZAP is typically looking for new vulnerabilities in custom web applications, and as such, the techniques don't change quite as quickly. But we do continue to evolve it, and we push out updates whenever necessary. And ZAP has an option to check for updates and automatically install scan rules.
Okay, and what composition software component composition analysis tools are you evaluating in the tools tool group?
So we've had was a couple of the guys from OWASP who are involved in some OWASP projects around that. So that's really where that focus has been. I mean, we're not at the moment evaluating new tools. I don't think anyone's looking at that. I think it's very much bringing together people who are working on existing tools. I'm certainly not aware of a load of resources we have across OpenSSF or in the tools working group for doing a big analysis of new tools or actually creating new tools.
Okay, and there's another one. Are you also looking at teaching vulnerability finders how to improve their vulnerability reports, i.e. digging deeper on fuzzing results before reporting?
We're not looking at that at the moment, but sounds like a very interesting thing to look at. So if anyone wants to come along to the working group and talk about that, then you'd be very welcome.
Great. There was one question, but I think you sort of answered it, which is, do you have any plan to run SASCAN and not only DAST? And how do you perform that? But you've already said that you're sort of bringing the teams together versus...
Yeah, I mean, for the working group, we're definitely covering both SAST and DAST. For ZAP itself, we have no intention of going to the SAST world. They're very different and very, yeah, our expertise is definitely in DAST. But for the working group, we're covering all security tools and all techniques, yes.
Okay, that's all I can see so far.
Thanks, Sharif.
Thanks.
Hello, everybody. My name is Krobe. I have the humbling great pleasure to represent two of the working groups today. First off, Zav and I are going to talk about the Developer Best Practices Working Group. Next slide, please. So you might ask yourself, what's this Developer Best Practices Working Group about? Well, our objective is to try to provide open source developers with best practices recommendations, the good practices in writing code, testing code, checking code, and we want to supply easy ways to learn about that and to apply that learning. Oh, my poor little goose. Ideally, we're looking to make this available for all open source developers. Everything we're doing is currently community sourced, and we want these practices to remain sticky so that we just don't apply security once and then move on and forget about it. We want these things to be ingrained into the developers' activities, their ways of thinking. And kind of our vision on how we're going to execute on this is, first off, we want to have an accessible set of an inventory of best practices. So we're going to be looking at things to help improve that return on investment for open source developers. We're looking at categorizing things by technology, language, and framework, and then all this information is going to be community curated. Secondly, we're looking at creating this community. It's can be very complex and challenging to keep up with everything that's going on. So our idea is to try to attract open source contributors and help them, kind of remain engaged and continually contribute to the inventory of practices so that the whole community can benefit. And finally, we're looking at implementing a learning platform. And this is a way, we mentioned the earlier training courses. So we're looking to try to find a way to help educate people. First and foremost, the courseware. We are looking at implementing tools and methodologies to get things either out to developers through containers or the web, or even integrated into their IDEs potentially. And we're looking to provide a suite of exercises to help teach some of these practices that are built into the inventory. Next slide, please. Just a quick snapshot. This is currently our most active contributors. We have a lot of folks. We're very interested in having many, many more people help us contribute because there's a lot to keep track of. Next slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Zav.
Hey, hello everyone. So me and my friend the Goose, we will tell you where we're at in this working group. So my name is Xavier. So first we have released the courses that Kay already talked about, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. Just what I want to tell you is that it's not a theoretical course, it's very practical, and also all the practices that are in there, any developer can apply them right now without requiring unlimited resources, right? We contributed to the new major release of the OWASP SKF learning platform. So SKF, the Secure Knowledge Framework, developed by Glenn and Ricardo Tenkate, is a vital asset to the coding toolkit of your development team. In SKF, you can learn from an open source security knowledge base. You will have code examples in multiple programming languages. You will have hands-on labs, but you can also create manageable projects with checklists, matching the specific requirements of your application. And so these checklists will guide you through your design and development phases. And therefore, this way you will integrate security by design in your application. And you can start using SKF with the link below right away, download it, install it, and go. Next slide, please. So what's next on our agenda? First of all, we would like to provide a public SAS platform for SKF. So this way you won't need to download it and install it on premises, but you will be able just to log in and get started right away using it to build your applications. Also, we think that it will make it much easier to welcome contributions from the community with this public platform. Second, we want to contribute to the OWASP integration standards project with the goal of providing an open source mapping of security requirements, testing strategies, best practices, threats and weaknesses. This would be really part of the inventory project that Craig mentioned in the introduction. Last but not least, we'll contribute to the security scorecards project. The goal of scorecards is to auto-generate a score for the security posture of an open source project. So you will use these on your project as you decide the target posture that you want for your use case. You can also use this data to augment your decision-making when you introduce new open source dependencies into your project. We want to build with these scorecards a culture of security through improved visibility. So this was a project initiated by Dan Lorank. That's it. Over to you, Krob.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. Awesome. Finally, we just wanted to wrap this working group to mention that we're very excited to get additional community participation. Anyone's welcome to pop on in and start a discussion or join in the existing threads associated with our mission and charter. We're looking for open source developers and security practitioners to come in, look at the educational materials, and not only make comments, help us build that library, but also help us provide advice on how those could be incorporated into people's daily activities. If you are a project or package maintainer, hey, look at tools like the Best Practices Project and make sure that you can get your project badge. Do you meet that kind of higher level of quality and expectations that the badge project can help you earn? And we meet every Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific. Ideally, this is the counter Monday to my next working group, but take a look at the public calendar and plan on joining us if you're interested in open source developer security. And I will now take questions.
Hi, there wasn't any particular questions with regarding to working group. There was a question on, was there any particular reason why a goose was chosen as the mascot? Yeah, so there was a link to it in the chat as well. But yeah, it was from Ian Coldwater, who likes the Untitled Goose Game. She made a presentation before, which I watched, talking about how hacking sometimes reminds you of the Untitled Goose Game. So when we're looking at badges or sort of logos, I sort of mentioned it, and Chris from the Linux Foundation wrote it down so that the designer can mock something up. And then we had to vote on the design and the design one. Okay, that's it. There is one other question, but I believe that would be more on the vulnerability disclosure working group. So I'll leave that to later.
That later is now. Ha 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 ha. I have, by process of elimination today, I have been nominated to talk on behalf of the Vulnerability Disclosures Working Group. I'm one of the co-leads for the group. Unfortunately, our dear friend Marcin is not feeling well today, so we hope he feels better. But if we could get the next slide, please. Matthew and I are here to represent the group. So this particular group we are interested in to help the overall security of open source software ecosystem by helping develop and advocate well-managed vulnerability reporting and communications. We plan on addressing this particular problem set through documenting and promoting reasonable vulnerability disclosure and coordination practices within the open source ecosystem for all the way back to component maintainers, to community members, and actual implementers by providing documented standards and educational materials. We hope to identify vulnerability disclosure pain points for maintainers, consumers, and researchers, and that way we can ideally help take steps to address those concerns, make it better for every user or participant within open source. And then we're looking to facilitate the development and adoption of standards-based open source security vulnerability exchange that uses existing industry formats. And this will allow open source projects of all sizes to be able to report, share, and learn about vulnerabilities within those open source components. Next slide, please. This is, again, another snapshot of the working group members. We, like every group, are very interested in participation. So if you have a particular hankering or interest or desire to help participate in this community, please welcome, join, come on in, and you get to work with all these great people. Next slide, please. Today, what we're addressing and the working group is committed to working on is we're looking to document and kind of capture those vulnerability coordination pain points from the maintainer perspective, the component consumer perspective for security researchers, and also service providers. We're collecting these through a series of user stories. They're going to help frame our future work. And we've already gone through and reviewed the disclosure practices that are employed by several of our members. We've looked at how vulnerability disclosure and coordination is handled by the Node.js ecosystem, the Ruby community, our friends over at Arch Linux, and what we do here at Red Hat. Next slide, please. So what's next is we're going to start sharing those standards of coordination for both CVE and advisory data in consumable formats. So right now we're kind of doing an assessment of what standards and techniques are used today. And we're starting to debate what the best path forward is to make a good recommendation for the ecosystem. And actually coming up at our next meeting, we're talking with the folks from CertCC. They have a project called Vince that speaks to vulnerability coordination and disclosure, and they're looking at open sourcing that project. So we're looking at the potential to possibly collaborate or leverage that project as we move forward and share our data. Next slide, please. And again, everyone is welcome to come and open up a discussion, continue on a discussion as it relates to our mission and charter. If you have pain points in whether it's reporting, sharing, or coordinating vulnerabilities in open source, we would love to talk to you. We'd like to hear your perspectives and hear your feedback on how we can make it better. Do you have suggestions on how we can more securely coordinate these reports to the subject matter experts that help fix the problem? Great, let us know. And again, we're looking to capture all those perspectives and try to find some collaborative solution that benefits the whole community. Again, we meet at 8 a.m. Pacific currently, and ideally it's the alternate Mondays from the developer best practice group, our hope. And we welcome you and hope that you can come join us. And I would open the floor for questions. I see a lot of comments about it being so early. Conversely, it's very late for my friends in Europe.
Yes.
And super early for my friends in Australia.
So there is one question that I've been saving for this moment, but the question is, when working with CVEs, we have the CVSS to say how severe they are. Should we have a scoring system for the extensiveness of the test coverage for a CVE fix?
That's a very interesting idea. It's something that the working group currently hasn't explored, but kind of listening to the presentations before me, myself, and thinking about who's coming forward after me, I think there's very definitely potentially a lot of people that could help contribute to that idea and have helped bring it together and see if we can think up some kind of a reasonable standard. So yeah, I think it's something the foundation at large could explore, and potentially the vulnerability group might be a good place for that.
Okay, there were two sort of admin related questions. So the first one is, how do we access the deck used in the presentation? So I've put them in the chat and then also slide.do. There was another question, is how do we join a working group that interests us? So an example of that is, how would someone join the vulnerability disclosure working group in that manner?
At least in the groups I'm affiliated with, every single one of us has that public calendar. So if you're interested in joining, contact us, let us know, whether it's in whether a Git issue or contacting us through Slack or on our mailing lists, and we'll be glad to coordinate you and get you included into our awesome little team.
Thank you. Last question, not working group related, but is participation in the outreach committee open? I believe that question is yes, it's just hasn't started yet, but we do have the GitHub link there if anyone would like to join.
I mean, technically right now, I don't believe there is a an outreach committee, but that is something that is being discussed. So if you're interested, let us know.
Oh, just to comment on that, we had started off of the governing board and outreach group, but it was like on Friday, so it's not even in the slides. Yeah, it's open. Anyone that wants to get involved, I'll put my email in the chat, but we'll also link out to the Get Involved in the upcoming days.
Thank you, and hot off the press.
Yeah, I think those are all the questions.
Okay, my turn. I think I just unmuted. My name is Dan Lawrence, and I've been helping coordinate the digital identity attestation working group. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in addition to geese and geese memes, we also like other memes too and other animals. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. This applies to open source software as well. You wouldn't give a stranger you met on a sidewalk access to commit to your internal Git repository. But when you take binaries you find on the internet and run those in production, that's basically what you're doing. This is not a new problem or a new space, but we are a new working group. The rise in open source software over the last couple of years has started to make this problem way more apparent and way scarier. So that's what we're here to help out with. We want to make it easier and safer. Oh, thanks. Sorry. We want to make it easier and safer for users of open source to understand where the software they're using is coming from. So far, we've mostly been learning about this space. Do you want to go to the next slide? Thanks. So far, we've been mostly learning about this space through a whole bunch of awesome presentations from domain experts all over the industry. We've had presentations from people running things like the Intoto project, which is a framework to secure the integrity of software supply chains, and stuff like the self-sovereign identity project out of the Hyperledger effort. And we've also been learning how existing projects do try to solve this today. We had some awesome presentations from people like Konstantin Ryabitsev. Sorry if I completely mispronounced your last name, who oversees the Linux kernel release process and how signatures and keys are managed there in order to secure new releases of the Linux kernel, as well as Miles Borens, who helps out with the Node.js releasing SIG. So what's up next? Next slide. We have a couple more awesome presentations coming. I think next week we have Enrico Zeno of the Debian project on how they verify Debian maintainers and how Debian handles GPG key management and web of trust issues, especially now with some changes they put in place due to the lack of in-person meetings because of COVID. And then after that, we have some people presenting from the DID, or Decentralized ID project, on some work to integrate DID directly into Git, as well as how to refactor some of the Git internals to allow signing of commits and other Git objects with things other than GPG. So if you're interested in this space and want to present or are trying to solve this problem in an open source project that you're a maintainer of, reach out. We have meetings every 2 weeks. There's a link here in the GitHub repo, and everything is open and public, so you should be able to find the calendar, invitation, and join. So, any questions here?
There's one question, not necessarily related to the working group. That was a question on, will the GitHub org for OpenSSF change to OpenSSF, since the Linux Foundation has OSSF, meaning open source strategy forum?
I have no idea. I don't know who the right person to answer that would be.
Yeah, no, I think it's, that we'll keep it as is for now if there's any confusion. But no.
If I remember correctly, we did try to do that, but there was another organization that already had it. So I think it was investigated, but this was the closest we could come up with.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Cool. So hey everyone, thanks again for attending our first town hall today, and Kay and Lindsay for organizing all of it and getting us together. So I'm Kim. I work at Google as a product manager, and of course focusing on securing open source projects we all depend on. So this is the last working group we'll be discussing today, and this is a great recent XKCD image that really sums up the problem we're trying to tackle. Our modern infrastructure is all being held up by some random project, by some random person in Nebraska that's been maintaining it. And then as Dan said, all of our usage of open source software keeps increasing. And so this sort of picture becomes more and more scary. And so next slide. So our mission is really quite simple, is we want to improve the security of the most critical projects that people rely on. And we want to do this with like-minded people and organizations. So, there's no point in all of us duplicating work to make improvements to one specific project. And it's obviously better if we can combine efforts and tackle these problems collectively. Okay, next slide. So Kay covered a bit of this in the beginning about some of the CII efforts that we had folded in. So we got presentations from the folks at Harvard on those. And we're really looking forward to working with them going forward and making improvements and some changes on that work that they're doing. We've also had some other presentations. Folks from OSSIF gave us a presentation on how their security audits process works. So that was very interesting. And then one of the docs that we started working on was what we're calling a menu of services. So not every open source project needs the same sort of thing when it comes to security. So this was supposed to be just a dumping ground of all sorts of ideas that we could come up with for helping projects out. And then yeah, I mentioned the Harvard work. Next slide, please. So what's coming up next? So we're looking at ways to raise money or for organizations to put funds towards specific efforts. And like I said, it's not all about just money. So, other ways that we can help projects, if it's through like consulting or what have you. So those are ideas being collected in that doc. And then another big problem, which is why we folded in some of the Harvard work, is coming up with that list of critical projects. So and doing that in a collective fashion. We want to identify, the top, say, 100, 1,000, and then go proactively figure out how to help and improve them. Next slide. And then similar to the other working groups, we meet every 2 weeks. You can see all of the links to the calendar and Slack and things from the GitHub repo. And then I think, one of our hardest problems is really figuring out how to make real impact. So even if we have money, sort of connecting that to get projects, or contractors fixing things is not as easy as we would like. So if you are interested in any of these, would love new ideas, would love creative thinking and ways we can help tackle this together. So turning money, into tangible results isn't as easy as we would all want it to be. So yeah, definitely open to having discussions on this. And that is it. Any questions?
There aren't questions on slide.do, but happy to take any, if any, from folks bring it up.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, I think there aren't any further questions. We did manage to answer as many as we can along the way. I think we got about 18 questions covered already throughout the town hall. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Kay, is there anything else to cover before we go? Hey.
Sorry, I got muted early, so I had to ask for permission to get unmuted. So let's take a minute and we've been using but now we're coming to the end of the meeting, and so maybe we can open up, and if others just have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask those questions. So we're interested in questions or any other discussion topics you have there. This time we don't have to use it if we don't have questions, but we're very interested in your thoughts. I'm sorry about all of my notifications. That's clearly I figured out how to run a public forum yet. So hopefully next time around we'll get this set up better. So. Any thoughts from anyone else? We'll get and, maybe that will leave an opportunity. I'm going to explore the edX, get some of the things like this. And
hey, Kay, I'm sorry. Sorry, Kay. We can't really hear you. Your microphone's cutting in and out.
Can you say something now, Kay?
Okay, I got muted, but now I'm back. I don't know if, is that better?
It's better.
Yes, much better. Thank you so much.
I don't know what I did, but okay. All right. Yeah, so I was saying that, it would encourage people to have a look at some of the other the links and content from the slide today. So to wrap up, there were some questions about how to get involved. So the best thing to do is to go to the OpenSSF website. There's a button for Get Involved. From that button, you'll see some icons similar to the icons here, and those will take you to the GitHub website. We'll take you to a page where you can sign up for our mailing list, and we have 8 or 9 or so of those currently. You can have a look at our calendar. So we have a Google Calendar that has all of the ongoing meetings on it. So you can see when those meetings occur. If there's a group you're interested in and you're not quite sure you want to commit to it yet, you can just attend one of the meetings. They're open and learn more about what's going on there, ask questions. And then as you learn, feel free to join the mailing list. We also have a Slack channel, and you can join Slack and ask questions on any of those channels. And then we've, from the website, you can find our blog, and we do also have a Twitter account for OpenSSF, so you could follow. It's called the OpenSSF, THE OpenSSF. So you can follow that to see news. So those are some of the ways that you can get involved, and everyone's welcome. And then just as a final note, if you can take a couple of minutes to complete the town hall survey, and here's a link to that survey. There are 6 questions on it. 2 of them are just, the basic, was this, what was the quality of the town hall, and do you have any suggestions for how to make it better for the future? Anything else you'd like to see in it? Any ways to organize it differently or better? Why we're open to all that. So we want this to be an opportunity that's informative and fun for people to learn about the OpenSSF. We will be sharing the deck and the recording for it. I'm not sure exactly how we will share that yet. It might be on the website, or we might send it as a, I think probably we'll send it at least to everyone who is registered for the event. So you'll see it there. And feel free to forward the recording or the slide deck to others if you know of others who might be interested. So that's what I have. One last moment to ask if anyone else has final questions. All right, it sounds like we're done. So thank you all very much. Great to have you with us. Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye.